Qing Prose Godson, as the proverb goes, one mother gives birth to 9 sons, and her mother has 10 hearts. Although the child is careless, he still likes to have a temper. Who can teach him to breathe through the same nostril as himself? Ordinary people can divide into 2 opinions when raising their children. One is to make their sons resemble themselves, the so-called Shaojikyu, and it is better to be able to cross the stove. The other is to hope that his son will no longer be as useless or as thankless as himself, the so-called resentment, such as Lu Xun's will, hoping that his son will no longer be a scholar, and Ming Xizong's bitter words about why his daughter was born in the imperial family. He only hopes that his children can live a stable life among the people, and do not have to be the royal family's golden branches and jade leaves and suffer the misfortune of a country's subjugation and annihilation. Most of the purposes of raising children are to do well for the son and to think about the son, but there are also some that are specifically for one's own benefit, such as teaching him to show off his relatives and become famous, and to perform more filial piety. In addition to these 2 methods, most people's so-called teaching methods for raising children are probably incomprehensible. People say that children are not allowed to lie, and I also say that they are not allowed. It seems that if a son accidentally said something, it would be a heinous crime. The way is to beat him severely and ask him, will this still be the case in the future? If the son begs for mercy with his words, his responsibility is over, and the work of educating his son has come to an end. But then he learned another lesson. He proudly talked about how he pretended to be a lay customer, but was almost exposed later. Fortunately, after he made up a lie and explained it like this, the transaction was finally successful. Therefore, when it comes to being a person, you must have the ability to lie, otherwise you will never be able to make a living in this society. Such teachings come and go, which makes the son confused. Fortunately, he does not take his father's teachings as a matter of course. Otherwise, wouldn't he be confused if he didn't even think about it? There are also fathers who started their own business from scratch. They regretted that they had not studied much since they were young, and desperately wanted to pour the 4 books and 5 classics into their sons' heads. So they paid for Mr. Dong Hang to lock his sons in the study room all day long and reading comprehensible things. As a result, his sons could not read the books. Tong, the body was damaged first. Wouldn't it be sad? There are also fathers who set up several factories by themselves and asked their sons to be the factory directors. They invested in him everywhere and asked him to serve as directors. However, the son only knew how to spend money, and the situation that he had worked so hard to support finally collapsed. These old men were all thankless for their efforts. They were doing nothing for their children. There was really nothing they could do to help Adu, who couldn't help him up. In the end, he only let out a long sigh, thinking that he had been wronged in his previous life. It should be noted that teaching has its own methods. The right method depends on the opportunity, and sometimes whether the objective environment at the time allows it. Ming's mother was lucky to find a house when she moved. Today, how would teach her to raise such funds? What about the advance payment? The son of a revolutionary may not be willing to make a revolution anymore. He may enter an aristocratic school or become a ready-made official in the government. Therefore, I say to the propaganda of many revolutionaries, find a way for our descendants. This kind of life sounds weak to me, because it is my urgent request to find a way for myself and find a way for our descendants. Road, I am always afraid of futility. If I go through all the trouble to find it for them, but they don't want to leave and want to find another way, wouldn't it be a waste of my efforts? Because the minds of younger generations are not necessarily the same as those of their predecessors. The Tao respected by the ancients will never be implemented, and the revolution advocated today will also be delayed in being realized. If the revolution proceeds along one road, it will reach its goal sooner or later. Otherwise, it may change in the middle and feel that this route is not quite right. Or it may still say that it is right but feel that it is not quite right in the heart, and then give up. The sheep's head of pastism is used to sell the dog meat of current policies. After such a divergence and resumption, the original planned destination can only be regarded as a relic of history, and the victims of the past died in vain. I think people's hearts will never be satisfied, and the revolution will probably never stop. But for our immediate needs, we have to revolutionize. As for our children and grandchildren, They have to decide what they want to do. So how can we do it for them? But the children are simply raised and not taught. What I mean is, teach him movements when he is a baby, such as using things to seduce him and make him dance. Or give him fake nipples and ask him to suck them to relieve boredom. When it gets a little older, teach it to walk. And when it gets older, teach it to speak and read. When I was young, I took physical health as the first priority, followed by knowledge. When I was in school, I focused on physical injuries caused by overwork. As for studying, I am not superstitious about school. If I can afford the tuition, I might as well let him hang out and end out of class, even if it means practicing social life and making more playmates. But it is important to strictly train in basic subjects, such as Chinese, arithmetic, common sense which can actually be used, etc. And because Chinese academics are so underdeveloped, the foundation of important foreign languages must be laid. Otherwise, it will be more difficult to study when you are older. If the child is over 12 years old, I hope to learn more skills, such as typing, sketching, or simple engineering. Being versatile is not a bad thing, although art is more valuable than excellence. If you don't let him know about it or try it, how can he like it? In terms of morality, I only taught him that he should follow whatever is beneficial to the group, because a person cannot go around taking things and annoying others, and in the end he has to live alone. Stealing other people's things will make them unhappy, so of course I will teach them not to do so. However, if a dragonfly does not harm the dignity of the child's family, I will never advocate sternly stopping him. If the child grows up, I will definitely teach him to read history and use his own brain to read it. I taught him that he must first understand how the so-called rights and wrongs of the past changed, and how they were discovered layer by layer, so that the new ones could correct the old ones, or simply overthrow the old ones. I want to tell him again what the so-called right and wrong interests are in my heart, how I am trying to implement my own opinions, and how I continue to live my life in contradiction until my death. If he sympathizes with me and regards my interests as right and wrong, then he will continue my legacy. If he does not agree with me at all, or he can find out that I am wrong from the knowledge I taught him, then I will smile and close my eyes, because this is all I have, and this is all I know. Whether to accept it or not is a matter for future generations. My so-called teaching responsibility is finally over.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.